In the heart of the Midwest, nestled between the rolling hills of Missouri and the winding rivers that cut through the Ozark region, life had always seemed steady, calm, and predictable for Emma Collins. She was a 38-year-old woman living in Springfield, Missouri, with her husband, Daniel Collins, and their two children, Hannah and Luke. On the surface, they appeared to be the perfect American family. Daniel worked as a financial consultant in a downtown office, while Emma managed a small but cozy bookstore on the outskirts of town. Together, they were the picture of middle-class stability: Sunday church services, summer barbecues with neighbors, family camping trips to the Ozarks. But as everyone knows, what people see on the outside rarely tells the full story. Emma wasn't the type of woman who believed in accidents when it came to choices. She always told Hannah and Luke, "Every action has a consequence, even the small ones." What she didn't realize at the time was that this very belief would come back to haunt her, shaking the foundation of her marriage and her identity as a wife and mother. It began innocently, as these things often do. One spring afternoon, while organizing a community book drive at her store, she met Mark Reynolds. Mark was a local contractor, tall, friendly, and charismatic, the kind of man who made people laugh within 5 minutes of meeting them. He had come to donate several boxes of old novels left behind after a home renovation. Emma thanked him warmly, not thinking much of it at first. But Mark lingered, asking questions about the store, about Emma's favorite authors, and eventually about her life in general. She noticed his easy charm, and she also noticed something she hadn't realized in years. She felt seen. At home, things weren't as smooth as the world believed. Daniel, while hardworking and responsible, had grown distant. He wasn't unkind, but he was perpetually distracted, his eyes glued to financial spreadsheets, his mind always chasing deadlines. Conversations at the dinner table had become practical exchanges about bills, homework, and weekend schedules. The spark they once shared seemed like a memory from another lifetime. Emma had tried to bring it up before, but Daniel would wave it off with promises that things would get better once he landed a promotion or once a big project was out of the way. Those once moments kept stacking up until years had passed. So when Mark smiled at her bookstore and told her, "You must love what you do. You light up when you talk about books," Emma felt something stir in her chest. It wasn't love, not even close, but it was recognition. And recognition can be powerful. The problem with choices is that they build upon each other. A single decision may seem harmless, but each one lays the foundation for the next. Emma didn't realize she was walking down a path until she was already halfway along it. The first choice, giving Mark her personal number under the guise of discussing book donations. The second choice, replying to his text later that night when he asked how the drive went. The third, meeting him for coffee just to talk. Each of these choices seemed small, defensible, excusable even. But Emma knew deep down that every step was a decision she consciously made. Nothing about it was accidental. Mark wasn't the villain in her story, nor was Daniel. The real conflict lived inside Emma herself. She battled between the loyalty she knew she owed her family and the longing she felt to be noticed, cherished, and valued as a woman, not just as a mother or wife keeping a household afloat. As weeks turned into months, the secret friendship with Mark deepened. Emma found herself hiding her phone, deleting messages, and crafting excuses to leave the house. Each lie weighed on her chest, yet she continued forward, convinced she could keep her world separate. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong, but in her heart, she knew dishonesty was its own kind of betrayal. One evening, as summer settled over the Ozarks and cicadas buzzed outside their porch, Daniel asked her, "Is everything okay with you? You've seemed different lately." Emma froze. It was the question she had been dreading. She wanted to confess everything in that moment, to beg him to see her, to fight for her, to close the distance that had grown between them. But instead, she forced a smile and said, "I'm just tired. Running the store has been a lot." Daniel nodded and let it drop, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the calm surface of their marriage. The truth came out not long after. It always does. A forgotten receipt, a misplaced text, a detail Emma overlooked. Daniel discovered her connection with Mark. Though it hadn't reached the stage of physical betrayal, the emotional intimacy was undeniable. The confrontation that followed was raw, painful, and unforgettable. Daniel stood in their kitchen, his face pale, his hands trembling as he held the evidence of Emma's choices. "You had 1,000 opportunities to stop this, Emma," he said, his voice breaking. "Don't tell me it was a mistake." "It wasn't. It was a choice you made, over and over again." Emma wept, not just out of guilt but because his words were true. She had convinced herself she was drifting into something beyond her control, but in reality, every step had been deliberate. She had planned it, whether she admitted it or not. The days that followed were filled with silence, tears, and long conversations that stretched late into the night. Daniel felt betrayed, not just because of Mark but because of the lies Emma had built around them. Emma felt ashamed, recognizing that she had jeopardized the most important relationship in her life not out of malice but out of neglect of honesty, communication, and the vows she had made years ago. Their children noticed the tension. Hannah, old enough to sense something was wrong, asked Emma quietly one night, "Are you and Dad okay?" That single question pierced Emma's heart deeper than anything Daniel had said. It took months of counseling, reflection, and effort before Emma and Daniel began to rebuild. The process was slow and painful. Trust, once broken, doesn't return overnight. But what Emma learned, and what Daniel slowly came to see, was that healing required the same thing that had caused the damage in the first place: choices. Every day, Emma chose transparency. Every day, Daniel chose patience. Together, they began to make deliberate decisions to reconnect, to prioritize one another, to notice the small things again. Emma closed the door completely on her communication with Mark, recognizing that even the smallest compromise could undo all their hard work. The moral of Emma's story was not about villainy or victimhood, but about responsibility. Cheating, she realized, isn't a single act. It isn't an accident or a slip. It's a series of choices, each one deliberate, each one with consequences. Affairs don't just happen. They are planned step by step by the decisions we make or fail to stop ourselves from making. In the quiet autumn evenings that later settled over their home, Emma and Daniel would sometimes sit on the porch swing, coffee mugs in hand, watching their children chase fireflies across the lawn. Those moments weren't flashy or dramatic, but they were real. And Emma understood now more than ever that protecting them meant choosing, every single day, to honor the life they had built together.